Special guest in the studio this morning, of course, Senator Jon Tester. And to kind of kick things off this morning, John, we wanted to focus on, you just took a trip down to the southern border. Kind of give me an overview of what you saw down there. Has any of your travels down there changed your opinion on anything or kind of differed where things are headed?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a very, very complex issue. It's not solvable by doing just one thing. It's multiple faceted. We saw everything. We saw what was going on in the ports and the good work that's doing there, both with the cars and the pedestrian traffic and with bringing the trucks across with produce. We saw part of the wall that was being built on top of a levee where we were down in McAllen, Texas, in the Rio Grande River Valley. We talked to some farmers and ranchers who were going to have the fence go across their land and basically separate their farms, and they weren't happy about that. So, I mean, overall, I think what we need to do is, in regards to places like El Salvador and Guatemala and even Nicaragua to a certain point, we've got to figure out what the push factors are and try to stop those people from leaving those countries to begin with. I can't help to think that somebody from Guatemala wants to make a month trip walking through Mexico to get to the southern border. On the other side, we need to make sure we have facilities there and make sure that the border protection and custom folks have what they need to be successful. It's a very complex issue, but the truth is, I think if we work together, if we look at what's worked in the past, and there are plenty of examples of what's worked in the past, and move forward using those methods, I think that we can come to a conclusion that works and keeps our border secure, which I think is critically important. Here's the problem with the wall. It will isolate in Texas alone about 1.1 million acres south of the wall, in between the wall and the Rio Grande Valley and the Rio Grande River, which will, in essence, move the border of the Mexican border up because it'll create a no man's land. And this is very high valued land. This is river bottom land. They grow lettuce and melons and cilantro, everything that's produce oriented, and so we've got our work to do, and I think if we work together we can come up with some solutions and help support common sense methods to keep our border secure.
Right. Now, how does that come about? How does the border wall actually get moved back like that, for instance? Whose decision is that?
What they're doing now is they're using a levee that an easement was given decades ago, and so I don't believe the farmers are compensated much, if anything, when it goes on top of the levee. The real issue here, though, is security, and I don't think this does it. And the reason is because once they cross the Rio Grande, that's American soil. Whether it's south of the wall or north of the wall, it's still the United States of America. And it will do some things for the drug trafficking, but certainly not going to do anything for the human trafficking.
Gotcha. Okay.
And moving on, talking about funding for the border wall, has anything been decided on where funding will come from for the border wall? And I guess, is our military project still in jeopardy of being delayed?
Well, what the president did with his emergency declaration said he was going to take some of the money away from military construction. That brings up all sorts of antennas of problems. We've got weapon storage systems out at Malmstrom that have been on a list for years and years. Finally, we're in the queue to have it built next year. We've got an apron up at the Guard since we've changed the mission from fighter to cargo mission. We need that apron expanded to make sure those C-130s are operational. That's in the queue. Nobody knows yet what projects are going to be eliminated, but the truth of the matter is these military construction projects enable us to be able to be successful when there's conflict. And if they're not there, it makes us less secure. So we're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I don't think that's the best direction to go.
Right, and now just following up, you were on the southern border, but you also were visiting Malmstrom Air Force Base a month and a half ago.
Yeah, that's correct.
I guess, what have you been hearing from Malmstrom officials there on base? Any thoughts as far as this?
They're still moving forward as planned for the weapon storage facility because they don't know if the money's not going to be there, so you assume it is going to be there. And hopefully it will be there because these are important parts for the security of our country. So they're moving forward until somebody tells them to stop. We're pushing on our side in Washington, D.C. to make sure that those dollars continue to be there and they're not raiding a fund for improvements at Malmstrom or at the Air National Guard for our nation's security.
Awesome. Well, I think that kind of sums up things real quickly here. You know, President Trump did make some comments about border security and how it's a little bit more important than, say, trade. What is your thought on that, and what are some of the impacts that Montana farmers could see?
Well, I think we can have both. I mean, the truth is that security is important, but trade's also important. Our economy needs to be robust, or security is put at risk. We can have both. As I said earlier, it's a complex issue, but the bottom line is, I think if we focus on what we did in Colombia a few years ago, and that is work to keep people in Guatemala, in Salvador, in Honduras, I think that's really where we should be focusing, plus making sure that our border security, using technology, using manpower. That's what happened when the unaccompanied children came a few years back. They used technology and manpower. Governor Perry of Texas stepped up, and they sealed that border off pretty effectively without utilization of a wall. So there's other options out there that, by the way, are much cheaper than a wall at $24 to $32 million a mile. Gotcha. But we can still have trade. We need to have trade.
Right.
It's about $1 million a day with Mexico, or maybe even more. That might have been $1 billion. I can't remember, but it's huge dollars coming across the southern border every day. Right. And we need to make sure that trade's there. Montana, in particular, ship a lot of barley to Mexico for malt, and plus we utilize the Pacific Rim, Japan in particular. So trade is really important for our agricultural producers in the state of Montana.
Right. Well, I think that answered all our questions. So again, thank you so much, Senator Jon Tester, for coming on in this morning and kind of giving us a recap of what we've got going on there. But